Hello buddy, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 Quick Magic gameplay. This time around we are on the Red Desert playing as the force of the Wood Elves against the force of the Skaven. And, well, as you might be seeing, based on the mini-map and, well, our unit dispositions, our army is a bit odd going into this matchup. And that's because this army has almost no infantry, and I say almost because we do have a single foot character. And so that guy's ruining the vibe by being on foot while everybody else is mounted or faster. So going over the build here, my idea was that with Skaven having gotten the Poison Wind Mortar, life's become a lot more difficult for Wood Elves. If you're going to try to do a Dryad rush or try to kite with Way Watchers and Deepwood Scouts especially, it becomes kind of difficult to get in range. Oftentimes the Skaven player will zone you out with Skaven slaves and trash units and summons, and you're not really able to get on those mortars, and in the meantime they're getting a boatload of guaranteed damage in on your missile troops. And so to deny that, we're simply going to bring a horde of cavalry, which those mortars will hopefully not hit, and overrun them in close quarters, and rely on our shock damage, our high fear, our terror, our high charge bonus to hopefully sweep aside key enemy units and rout them from the field. So going over the build here, for my Lord, I'm going to be rocking Orion. The Lord of the Wild Hunt is coming in, well, on foot, obviously, but he's a pretty solid character against the Skaven. He's coming in with his Horn of the Wild Hunt, of course. Gets me that beefy charge bonus boost, which synergizes excellently with Wild Riders, who we've got a lot of. He also does have a Foe Seeker, Hawk's Talon, and the Hounds of Orion. Good disruption and able to mess up Skaven blobs. And you'll often see hordes of infantry, so I figured this would be a good choice there. And of course, the Cloak of Isha, which is almost mandatory if you bring Orion. It allows him to soak some damage once his HP pool has dropped a bunch. Once he's down to 20% HP, he's going to become much tankier and start regenerating health, which allows him to stay in the fights that he would otherwise lose. Besides that, of course, he's anti-large and AP, so he's going to be a good choice for pressuring big enemy monsters and big enemy characters. Ikit, Grayseers, that sort of thing. Alongside him, a Waystalker here on foot, of course. He's got the Arrow of Kurnus. He's going to be looking to pop some shots down range at the artillery, especially looking to snipe out the Plague Claws, looking to snipe out mortars. In case my Wild Riders are not able to close the gap fast enough, this guy can apply some pressure there, and if push comes to shove, he can do some cleanup in melee. The sole non-Vanguard unit in this roster, of course, Spellslinger of Beasts. She's coming in on Eagle, which does, granted, makes her a bit expensive, and does mean that if she gets caught, it's going to be quite the pricey loss, but at the same time, it does mean she can get into good positions to cast her. Manticore means we can get into good positions to harass the backline, and we can use Pan's Impenetrable Belt to support our melee cav. Although obviously we're missing out on the heals, which are excellent with, say, the Wild Hunters of Kurnus, there really isn't that much on this build that we can actually really want to heal. Besides that, the build is a lot of Wild Riders. So 2 units of Wild Riders over here, one of them the Hunters of Kurnus. These guys with their magic damage, and especially their anti-large, will tear through units like Dragon Ogres, as well as help at Abominations. And they'll even do quite the number on Doom Wheels and Doom Flares, which you can sometimes see, especially as a blocking unit. 3 units of Wild Riders out on this flank. We do have a single unit with that's unshielded, but otherwise lots of shields to hopefully soak up missile pressure from potential slings and that sort of thing. And they'll be looking to just pulverize the enemy front line and then disrupt the back line when the opportunity rises. Finally, 2 units of Glade Riders with Hagbane tips are there as well. These guys can provide some very valuable support. The poison means we can support our troops really effectively. Obviously nowadays it doesn't do friendly fire, so, or I should say it doesn't do friendly poison, so we can poison the enemy with no fear for our own safety. And these guys can whittle down key targets, so they can snipe away at Plague Claws if they get into position, Rat Ogres, Hell Pits, that sort of thing. For the rest of my opponent's build, or for my opponent's build, I should say, it's a mix of Clan Rats and Skaven Slaves for the front line. Very cheap but efficient front line there. The Vulcan Tail Slashers, who of course are pretty powerful against the Wood Elves with their stable stats and fiery damage. They'll do well against Dryad rushes. We also do have a Assassin who is coming in, and you can see he's already popping some of his abilities there. He's got Slippery and Concealment Bombs. This bad boy's got the Rival Hide Talisman. Great for soaking up initial attacks and just stalling. Slippery to protect himself. Assassin's Trophy to potentially snipe out Orion. Was trying to get it off there, but Orion just kind of backs off. This guy isn't fast enough to catch him. And then, of course, he's got Skaven Brew, which buffs a specific unit once in a game, but it gives him a pretty massive boost to damage output. Can really make, say, a unit of Clan Rats fight a lot better. Besides that, Grayseer of Plague for the Lord choice. This guy is quite the potent force. He does have the Warstorm Scroll there, so he doesn't have too many targets because we didn't bring much air, but can potentially wound my caster or my poor Manticore summons. Arcane Conduit for the Winds of Magic, Pestilent Breath, as well as the Dreaded 13th, so looking to get those Halberd summons. Unholy Clamor, which is going to be tough to counteract, and is going to let my opponent stay in fights much longer than you'd normally expect. Of course, the Bound Scorch, Plague Rash, as well as Portents of Verminous Doom. So debuffing that leadership, looking to get some quick routes and keep my troops back. Dryads, of course, especially pretty vulnerable with their bad leadership. Avalanche Mortars, 2 Plague Claw Catapults, providing artillery support. As you can see here, we're already getting a nice engagement with our Wild Riders, the Merry Rudolphs, plowing into the Rat Ogres. And isolated like this from any support, they will go down very, very swiftly. And of course, the Hagbane tips just raining in death and destruction. And this is one of those things you never want to see as Skaven. You never want to let your Rat Ogres get caught out in a fight like this, especially against a burst cav like Wild Riders. It means you will go down very, very swiftly. And these guys are just having a terrible time. The Clan Rats are not in position to help. They're all but gone. Avalanche Mortars, in the meantime, getting chipped away at. And they are protected here by a Helpit Abomination. This unit, it's not great against Wood Elves, but it can do some hurt, and it's going to be a stable anchor, especially when I have no missiles to really pressure it down. Unfortunately, you can see over here, these Rat Ogres also caught out of position without support, and the Wild Hunters of Turnus just take them to task, especially with that Horror of the Wild Hunt going. That means these guys' weapon strength is into the hundreds. It's over 150, I believe, against large. So they just annihilate those Rat Ogres. They're removed from play near instantly. And although the Plague Claws do pivot to engage, they are being rained upon by those poisonous shafts, and the Manticore is in there. Rattlehead Talisman trying to protect this pocket, but not able to do so. Wild Riders running amok, and my opponent trying to flex around, trying to block with Clan Vulcan's Flail Slashers, trying to cover all these angles, and not able to do so as Orion just piles in, looking to get this engagement going. Manticore summon, terror routing these troops, and as they rout out of the pocket, we're going to be able to pick them off. You can see the Avalanche Mortars removed almost immediately. Waststalker continues chipping away. I was trying to get shots in on the Assassin, but I believe we lost track of him here, and might have actually swapped targets to Grace here. I think we actually friendly fired Orion there, so it definitely happens sometimes. In the meantime, the Gracier Plague here is forcing off these troops. These Wild Riders are having a straight up bad time, but in the meantime, the Spellsinger removing all this artillery crews and the Skaven slaves from play, and kind of at this point the battle's almost won, and it's only taken seconds since engagement. The Wild Riders are going to get routed over here, terror routed by the Helpit, which is nearby. But at this point, my opponent's pocket is about a quarter of what it was. The Helpit is getting rained upon there by the Glade Riders' Hagbane tips, just whittling it down. I don't have too many targets. I could have probably fired on the Gracier, but Gracier, for those of you wondering, the reason why I didn't fire on the Gracier is because he's really resistant to Glade Riders' Hagbane tips. Besides the 100 armor against non-AP missiles, he does have 25% missile resist, I believe, as well as 25% magic resist. So you've got 50% less damage there. Not ideal. Heir of Kurnus there piling in, trying to get the assassin, and instead just gives a bunch of Clan Vulcan tail slashers. So what can you do? 80 kills on the Waststalker. Basically all misses on the assassin, killing the clan rats around him. But a terror kicking in. Orion just an absolute beefcake there, towering over those pathetic rats, and they really don't stand much of a chance against him. In the meantime, the Spellsinger of Beast there, looking to get an opportunistic rear charge, jumps in. Clan Vulcan tail slashers routed by the Wild Riders as the Manticore pressures the Gracier, and Helpit trundling along, trying to get into a fighting position there, but just bleeding HP like mad. You can see Balance of Power actually shifting back as my opponent's troops kind of rally on the periphery. He actually got a nice summon there. The Stormvermin explosion taking down quite a few of my riders there, but we're going to pull back. Big misplay here on my part, allowing these guys to keep firing into the Stormvermin halberds. Never waste your time on a summon like this, or ammo on a summon like this, especially when all you've got is cavalry. These guys literally don't stand a snowball's chance in hell of catching these guys unless I screw up like this, which I do. You can see some poor Wild Riders topple into the dirt, but that is a big misplay on my part. I really shouldn't have had that happen. I should have just been able to walk away. In the meantime, though, we are picking off my opponent's peripheral troops. The Skaven slaves here get caught out by the Wild Riders and the Spellsinger, so that is quite the win. Orion, though, getting surrounded, and keep in mind, Orion doesn't have the best of mass. He may be the king of the woods, he may be the Lord of the Wild Hunt, but trapped like this, he's getting surrounded by the Clan Rats, by the Vulcan Tail Slashers. Gracier, of course, is in there, and more importantly, the Helpit and the Assassin are doing massive chunks of damage to Orion, who's only got 30 armor, and he doesn't have resistance to their damage, so he's just very, very vulnerable. But the Rain of Fire from the Hagbane tips is going to mitigate the damage from basically everyone in this pocket. Even the Assassin, I believe, is actually the Assassin has not taken any hits, but it's going to rout off these troops. Fear, Terror, of course, helping. Waststalker now pushing in to close the gap, trying to get some hits in. But Orion dangerously close to death, and you can see Balance of Power shifting back as another explosion shakes the earth, and Stormmen pour forth from that hole that they blew. And stand around looking pretty, because my opponent now finds himself, he's not really able to pursue these guys. They're just going to move away. I'm not obligated to stand there and fight. The only threat right now is that if Orion gets killed off, it could start being a problem for my for the rest of my army. I don't have terror on any other units, so losing Orion would mean I can't terror out off these supporting troops. So we're going to start pulling back there. And the Waystalker does get caught here by Clanrat Spears, but he's not a pushover in melee, as you might expect. 55, 45, and passable weapon strength at 325. He's going to be able to fight his way clear of trash troops like this. And just in case, the Spellsinger rides in. The Eagles are coming. The Eagles are coming. Sweeps it and explodes some unfortunate rodents into bloody gibbets. So just not a good time. My opponent's artillery batteries and Skaven slaves getting run off by the crippled Wild Riders. Orion here hit by Assassin's Trophy, getting swarmed, but we do get the counter charge. Having isolated my opponent, one of the nice things here, keep in mind, we've managed to separate the Hell Pit as well as the Gracier away from his infantry support, so that means that they're now in a much more opportune position for the Wild Riders to swarm in. Wild Hunters, of course, will be doing massive chunks of damage on the charge, hitting like trucks against a lightly armored large unit like the Hell Pit, though. As we will see here, it is going to get a nice little burst of healing. Too horrible to die, proccing there, and just getting burned through. It isn't able to do quite enough, and it does topple to the earth. Skaven Slave Spears spawning just in time for the rout, and a close victory for the Woodland Realm. So going over the build here, obviously a bit goofy and very much an all-in rush, but I think it can work against the traditional Skaven way of playing. Usually, when you play against Skaven with the Elves, with the Wood Elves, I should say specifically, you'll see a lot of Plague Mortars, or I should say Poison Wind Mortars. You'll see Plague Claw Catapults. You'll see, well, a very artillery-heavy build, occasionally with a bunch of slings mixed in. And it can be very hard to overrun that sort of build with infantry involved, because you're getting massive amounts of damage taken from the mortars or heavy artillery pieces. Your infantry just melting to that. Your infantry doesn't have the best leadership, and if your opponent brought a few Doom Flares, or just they've got some pellets to throw at you with the very annoying slingers, you're going to start bleeding hard. Dryads will fall apart surprisingly quickly under focused fire, and they won't be able to beat your opponent's front line and push through fast enough to secure a win. So they're not necessarily that great of a front line. And if you can't really bring that infantry, it then becomes a question: why would you want to bring, say, Deepwood Scouts or Way Watchers or units like that? Because you can't really protect them, and a single unit of Skaven slaves can cost effectively run them off the field, or run them too far to do damage. So at that point, might as well go all in my opinion. Very much focus on this sort of mass assault of the cavalry. And it works. Obviously, the kill counts on the Glade Rider is not very high, but Chevron gained there. They just did immense work against the artillery and the Hell Pit, so getting damage where it counts. Waystalker up to 90 kills. I don't actually think he really paid for himself. I like him against Skrulk, and I like him against foot characters, but in this game, he just wasn't able to get the shots in on the Assassin, kept killing rats instead, and kind of failed there, even though he did take a model off the Plague Claw early on. Orion, absolute champion, just holding his ground. Spellsinger, of course, very disruptive. That's really what you bring her for. And the Wild Riders just went ham. 2 chevrons, 300 kills almost on it. 1,200 gold cavalry is no laughing matter. Even when you factor in that many of those were Skaven slaves. That's 2 chevrons gained there. And they did some good work. Now for my opponent's build here, I do think there were a few mistakes in the composition. I think you're probably better off with Doomflayers rather than Rat Ogres, or maybe rather than the Hell Pit. I think the Hell Pit's just not flexible enough to cover all angles against a big Wood Elf push. And I do think Pebbles and Slingers are very, very strong in this matchup. I think you could cut down some of these Clan Rats, bring Skaven Slave Slingers, bring that cheap budget pressure, maybe a Jezzail or 2 as well. Just try to pressure your opponent at long range, and then zone them out with summons. Maybe bring an extra Clan Rat summon on your Gracier, and just screen your opponent out with a horde of Skaven slaves while you pound them away with artillery. Avalanche Mortar, interesting choice. It didn't get really any value in this game, and I think part of that is just because the only units it had in range initially were single entities. And by the time we could pivot to engage the cavalry, it was already too late. The cavalry was atop them, and these guys can do some good damage against cavalry, but not when they're compromised so swiftly. And so I'm not sure about these guys. I think normal mortars would probably be better, but that's just my 2 cents there. Regardless, fun little game here against Skaven. Definitely a brutal matchup for Wood Elves traditionally, but I felt that this cav build did its job. Hopefully you guys did enjoy the video. As usual, leave your thoughts, opinions, comments, and critiques down below. I'll do my best to respond as soon as I can. Do thank you all for watching, and we'll see you all in the next one. Wyvern out.